Hi, everybody. This is Matt Towers from CPA.com. I'm excited to be here today and on the line with Matt Lawless from Baker Tilly. And he's here to tell us a little bit about his experience and findings being involved in our pre-release pilot of a new program coming out called OnPoint EBP. And the EBP is with respect to employee benefit plan audits. We are targeting to release that here in June, so coming up very quickly, and we're excited about that. For quick context for everybody, OnPoint EBP has been specifically built to help firms with kind of the end-to-end processing of employee benefit plan audits that are, I guess the colloquial term is limited scope. It's ERISA Section 103A3C pursuant engagements, and those represent in the neighborhood of 80% of all employee benefit plan audits that are performed. So having said all that, Matt, welcome. Thank you very much for joining today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be talking to you again.
Yeah. So maybe just very briefly, you could tell us a little bit about your role there at Baker Tilly, and then we'll kind of lead into a little bit more about this pilot experience in OnPoint EBP.
Yeah, sure. So I've been with Baker Tilly for a little over 8 years now. I'm an audit manager, and I have a lot of experience with auditing benefit plans. I've been auditing benefit plans since I started. That constitutes the majority of my work between the months of May and October. So I've been doing this for a long time and have a lot of experience, especially with defined contribution limited scope audit plans.
All right, good deal. So it was pretty much natural then when the opportunity came, they probably said, Matt, you're the guy. We want to have you take a look at this product and kind of dig in and give us some feedback. So when we start, I guess, looking at that, I'm kind of curious to know, with these limited scope types of audits, going into, like, leading into this pilot experience, what are some of the challenges that you've maybe noticed around these audits?
Sure. So in my experience, some of the challenges I've seen is that teams tend to approach these defined contribution limited scope audits using a cookie cutter audit process. And, you know, to be fair, there isn't always a ton of variety in how you audit these plans. They are relatively straightforward. However, you know, each plan has its own quirks, has its own nuances, and sometimes that requires tailoring your audit procedures and your risk assessment to address those differences. And so sometimes I see that falling through the cracks with teams where they aren't considering some of those specific quirks for each plan and are just applying a cookie cutter risk assessment and cookie cutter audit procedures to the audit. Another challenge I see, which isn't necessarily specific to employee benefit plan audits, but just audits in general, is consistency in documentation throughout the audit file. So making sure that what we are documenting and evaluating in the planning and risk assessment stage gets built into our audit programs and our audit procedures, and we ultimately conclude on that in wrap-up, and making sure that documentation and conclusions reached are consistent throughout the file.
Yeah, I hear that kind of feedback from other people when I talk to them about employee benefit plan audits, and I've been having conversations with a lot of different firms on this subject, and I think a lot of those sorts of challenges are what led to the intended build for OnPoint EBP. It's, let's look at these challenges, let's see what can we do to help firms solve some of these challenges for themselves. So I think it's probably a great way to segue into your experience then in this pilot program. So to give a little context, everybody, the piloting of this product, so we had a number of firms that were involved in working with the development team around walking through the product, giving some feedback. This was, I believe now, 5 months ago, roughly, maybe a little bit more. It was near the end of the year, into the beginning of this year, right? So with all of that having been said, then Matt, maybe you can give us your own perspective around just being involved in a pilot in general, and then kind of what your initial impression was once you got a chance to really dig in with the product.
Sure. Yeah. So it was about 5 months ago. I think was over the holidays. So we took one of our benefit plan audits from this past year and basically reperformed the audit through the OnPoint EBP tool. And, I'll have to say that I was very impressed with the tool. I thought it was very user-friendly. I thought it was intuitive, and I think it's going to create a lot of opportunities for efficiencies in these benefit plan audits. I think there are a few things I was very impressed with. One is that it's a comprehensive tool, and it has everything laid out for auditors, from initiating client requests and collecting documents to drafting the financial statements and footnotes, guiding you through the risk assessment process and tailoring your audit procedures accordingly all the way through wrap up. A few things that stand out are the tool creates standardization specific for benefit plan audits. So depending on how much experience you have auditing benefit plans, maybe you don't know, what the common risks and risk areas are for those audits, but the tool starts with basically kind of standardized risk assessment, for all the different financial statement and transactional areas that you have to audit. However, it also provides guidance to tailor your risk assessment and your audit procedures based on how you answer certain questions. So one of the key features of the tool is called the plan profile, which is essentially a questionnaire that auditors go through, and they answer a series of questions basically to address all the different provisions that are applicable to that plan. The plan profile from there links to your risk assessment forms. So based on how you answer different questions, your risk assessment forms will become tailored to prompt you to determine whether or not, an elevated risk exists for a certain area. So to throw out an example for benefit payments, right? If your plan allows hardship distributions, that's a unique type of transaction where additional procedures might be required. You might want to dig a little bit deeper. So a prompt you answer yes to having hardship distributions in your plan on the plan profile, and then in the risk assessment form, it'll prompt you to consider whether an elevated risk is necessary specific to that type of transaction, and same in the audit program. The other thing that's really cool about the plan profile is that it drafts your financial statement footnotes for you, which I think creates a lot of efficiency, is going to save a lot of time. So based on how you fill out this profile, you basically have your financial statements done. So again, this one feature within the tool really kind of knocks out your financial statements and the footnotes and your risk assessment and your audit procedures all for you. And then in terms of standardization, Matt, the other thing that I think is very helpful is standardized testing templates and sampling forms. The test for participant data and attributes specifically stands out to me, where it really is formula driven and linked, and based on how you fill out the form, it basically does a lot of the work for you, and kind of takes the judgment and the thought process out. So I think the tool overall, the linkage between all these different forms is going to create huge efficiencies for audit teams.
So there's a lot to unpack. I think with what you just said, there's a lot going on. A couple of things that I took away: standardizing, obviously in terms of the approach, and I guess knowing that this is really geared towards those what we've traditionally called limited scope engagements. So there's more that can be kind of predefined or maybe pre-positioned, if you will, that can help standardize and sort of make the approach more efficient out of the gates. I'm glad you described the plan profile, because it's really almost like this epicenter of where information flows, if you will, throughout the engagement. And the linkage, that linkage you refer to is really key, because it helps people avoid redundant data entry. It helps eliminate the human error element that goes along with that. Something I'm wondering about is, Baker Tilly, right? You guys have, we don't have to get into the details, but it's safe to assume if you're part of an employee benefit plan focus, you must do a lot of these engagements. But I think a lot of what you said, Matt, is relevant to firms that might only do a handful. In fact, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I want to say it's over 90% of all of the employee benefit plan firms out there are doing just a handful, like less than 20 or 15, something like that. So the vast majority of firms out there are really only doing kind of a limited number, presumably for probably their bigger clients, more important clients. So is anything in particular like stand out to you in terms of how might a firm in that situation who only does maybe 5, 10 of these employee benefit plan audits, how would they stand to gain through using OnPoint EBP?
Well, I think a few things. So one, I really believe that the time savings are going to be significant. I think it's going to cut back on a lot of the time incurred in terms of review and just pure prep time. The financial statements alone I think is one of the biggest items that comes to mind, where the work will basically be done for you already. Otherwise, the guidance in this tool is specifically tailored to benefit plans, obviously. So, I think that it's going to provide guidance that for firms, won't have to think of on their own. Like it's going to basically direct them to make sure they're considering all the factors that they need to in auditing these defined contribution limited scope plans.
Perfect. I think I saw a keyboard over in the corner when you're with your camera there. I got my guitar over my shoulder, over this way on my shoulder. So maybe next time we get together, we got to jam out a little bit.
Yeah.
It's good. No, it's good. But nonetheless, those are great takeaways. Certainly, I think what's exciting about this is an acknowledgement that, hey, the vast majority of these engagements are pursuant to ERISA Section 103A3C. Why not take a look at what can we do to really help improve quality and efficiency in those engagements specifically? And I know it's been a while since you were involved in the pilot, so I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of circle back to that experience, to offer some of your insights there, and to not only talk about the impact that you see in terms of your experience having done a number of these over the last 8+ years, I think you said, but also helping distill it a bit for a lot of those firms out there that are doing just a handful of these audits. And I'm really looking forward to when we have the product available for firms to purchase, which is coming very soon. And I really thank you again for your time today, Matt. I think this has been very eye-opening, very appreciative, certainly from my standpoint. I'm hopefully the folks listening and watching here got some nice takeaways.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yep. Take care.
Thanks. You